This is the Gartner Data Analytics Summit. It's down in Orlando. It's March 3rd through the 5th this year. It's at the Gaylord. It usually is either in Grapevine or the one in Orlando. So it's a nice venue. It's large, friendly, usually about 5,000 folks. They said there were 8,000 this year. It definitely felt like there was more. I don't have an exact number, but very well attended. Again, the folks that are attending are dropping over $5,000 to be there. So they must care enough about this topic to be there. And it typically, I think it lends itself more to leadership. And so the folks that you're talking to and learning from, they tend to be more senior folks in the space. A lot more new players trying to understand who's two guys in the garage versus an established technology. So all of them, though, are claiming after the new space in AI, right? So all this agent-based AI, agentic AI, that seems to be in like everything now, or at least a promise that everything's powered by that in some way. So one of the vendors was effectively saying, oh, don't worry about doing analytical implementations of MDM anymore. We've got these agents now. We can do operational implementations. It's not an issue. Okay, but again, there's the governance, the process, all the things that have to happen for even their tool to work, right? I was surprised at how integrated all the topics were. Typically you have these breakouts and it was a little bit more focused. This time it seemed like everything had a little bit of everything. I think AI definitely showed up everywhere. Agentic AI showed up in it seemed like every vendor booth had a new offering that involves that. But it's definitely there, but I thought they did a good job of not letting it shut down the valuable conversations we're having around governance, data quality, business value, other things as well. Well, I think this is definitely a paradigm shift, right? You're seeing things that's interesting, all that we've learned the last couple of years, but now we've got things that can actually go do, right? And do in such a way that it's just a force multiplier as far as digital workforce and digital laborers just in general. Again, this is going to be kind of the new standard at some point. I don't think it's wrong for them to spend so much time thinking about it and talking about it, but it was a little bit over the top about how much it came up versus how much is actually in use right now. But as far as specifically around, what is AI, how does it translate directly into business value? There's the obvious ones right around just operational efficiencies and those kind of things. But I think that the overall emphasis was on how do we generate business value as a whole with data and analytics and really focus on that and tying everything we do to that value. That was prevalent in, again, nearly all the sessions, probably as much, if not more, than AI itself. One thing I think that was a really positive takeaway and was said multiple times, but I don't know that folks are going to really understand this until later. When folks get further down their journey in AI, having AI-ready, trusted data products is super critical. And they said this multiple times. It was like, hey, AI, that's great, but if your products aren't ready, based on how they're governed, the quality, all these different things, you have to really question what sort of decisions you're going to make with whatever the AI may produce. So I think that point was super valuable, but unless folks had actually been through some of the growing pains, I don't know if they're really going to appreciate that or really heard what they really said until later on when they start going down this path. The differentiation between data products generically, which could be data assets, different things, right? A generic term versus data as a product, implying that there's a whole discipline around thinking about data. Because technically you're still producing the same kind of things. You're producing data sets, you may be producing the three different levels of tiers of data products, those being source-oriented, aggregated, or consumer-facing data products. But at the end of the day, it's all the same technologies and techniques that you're using. It comes down to your thinking, your mindset, your perspective, the lens you put on that development, the governance structure around that. Reuse is a huge theme here. So there's going to be efficiency gain when you have a good data product that is trusted, well understood, published, people understand the metadata, that metadata is kept up to date. That now becomes an asset that you can leverage in what you're trying to do with AI. So you've got this great AI vision. It needs to be built upon these trusted products. So data as a product is a super kind of foundational mindset of how you can start building reusable items that can be used for BI too and other things, but that becomes your foundation of things you go to when you want to do more with AI. So one thing I thought was very interesting is with all the different topics going on and thinking about how we think about data and analytics and looking at our MAP framework. Now, our MAP framework has evolved over time. There's probably some additional evolutions, but right now it feels like that we're way out in front of things. So I feel like a lot of the messaging was almost sort of catching up to how we've been thinking about how we message things with our customers. So talking about trust, supply, analyze was great, but they talked about trust and all those things, but then They said you have to work your way upstream of that and really talk about readiness. Well, if you look at Map Framework, it's already there, and we've been talking about that for over a year now. So that came up, the readiness aspect. I thought that was interesting and very validating. The other aspect is, if you look at Map at the lower right, you've got decision intelligence. And when I talk to clients and customers, talk about the fact that this is not just a buzzword. There's a real discipline around this. It's made kind of more well known by Lorian Pratt in her book Link. But to see them call it decision intelligence in such an intentional way was very encouraging. And I think it's the right thing to do, because I really think that that's where the conversation needs to be pivoting. If you're trying to wrap together data as a product and value as a whole and quality and governance and AI and BI, at the end of the day, it should be about making better decisions. So I thought they had a much better perspective than usual and really try to understand what decision intelligence is. They had a couple of sessions. I attended both of those. So I thought that was interesting and the right call out, because I think there's a lot more discussion that should be happening around that topic, so we don't just get lost in AI only or whatever the news thing's going to be. Now, AI's been around for a while, but the idea is, what are you doing with it? To your point around business value, well, how are you making decisions and how are you using AI to make those decisions? I think that's where the connection is between AI and business value. The vendor hall has its own, if you've got enough of these, it's pretty interesting to see, one, how many folks show up, right? So if you go to a Snowflake summit, you're going to see probably 200 ecosystem vendors that all focus on that. They all have their individual value props. This is the general analytics and data management / AI summit. So it was everyone, right? And it was interesting to see, though, some of the vendors, I don't want to name names, but vendors that used to have very prominent booths or chose to, and you could see where their influence has just declined over time or diminished. And so before you'd see a nice large, maybe you walk in and there it is, and instead now it's a little 4-foot table in the back, lined up next to 19 other small tables and 3 or 4 other names that used to be something 4 or 5 years ago, and either they're choosing not to invest or they just have become less relevant. So I think that's interesting. I think it's a shift in how people are thinking about this. More traditional technologies are kind of falling a little bit by the wayside. But also, though, there's a willingness by these newer players to invest a lot of money in being seen and heard at these kind of things. So one of the biggest booths out there, you walk right out of the main ballroom where the keynote is, and there's 2 vendors there, one of which I'd never heard of before. The other one I certainly thought was too small to have like a huge booth. So people are investing in new ways. There's an MDM company I talked to. They've been around less than a year, and they had a booth that was 5 times the size of vendors that I've talked to 5-10 years ago. So interesting. I think within companies, those understand in their role the importance of making good decisions, basing it on data and using AI where it's appropriate. That's what success will look like for individual kind of knowledge workers day to day. When it comes to consulting companies, I think, again, not being so laser focused on technology and being able to speak to the strategic nature of things, the enablement piece in addition to the execution, super important. And also being able to talk to customers around what their actual business is, because you can't understand their business, you can't understand what decisions are going to be a priority for them. So I think for a consultancy like ours to be successful, we've got to tie things back to business value. We have to think about things holistically. So data quality, governance, all those things, and the enablement piece and OCM to complement the technical execution. For individual technology vendors to be successful, I think that's going to be its own challenge, because trying to stay relevant as things are rapidly, just every day they're changing. I mean, the rate of change is changing and increasing. So staying relevant as a technology vendor, I think that's going to be probably one of the bigger challenges to success. So I think it's important to understand that data management is complex, and again, all the different sessions did a better job of incorporating all the different ingredients into each session, even though they all had individual focuses. So I think that there's some real value in when our customers look at MAP and talk to us about MAP, because I think that there's all the ideas that I heard, they all fit in somewhere in there. So I think that's good. I feel better about this still being this comprehensive framework that can really help customers. So I think that was really important. And that decision intelligence piece at the lower right, I think we need to talk to our customers more about that, because that's really going to start bringing business and IT together and bring AI and BI and everything else to come together in the right context going forward.